Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Call to order. Welcome to Session 9, Council Meeting of Brock Township. Our council meetings are open to the public with procedural rules that differ from a public meeting. These will be explained as we go along with the agenda. This is also the very first meeting in the history of Brock to be videotaped. The taping can be found on the Brock website and will be available to view later this week. The only items that will be removed from the videotape will be long breaks. No content will be removed. The video will capture your presence in the council chamber. However, only those participating in the meeting and speaking into the microphones will be heard. By your presence and participation in this council meeting, you acknowledge that you've been informed that you may be recorded as part of the process and grant your permission for such. Prior to proceeding with the business at hand, let us observe a moment of meditation and personal reflection. Thank you. Before we begin through the agenda, for those in attendance, especially those that have not been to a council meeting before, there are probably 4 parts of the agenda that may be of the greatest interest tonight. The first is hearing of deputations. While none are scheduled, we will attempt to accommodate any requests that did not make it on the agenda. Next of interest will be the Catlin Park land offer found in Communication 1397 under Group 3, Commissions Submitted for Action. At that time, Council will have a discussion and a vote on a resolution. Following later in the agenda will be a presentation of a bylaw concerning the Catlin subdivision. Finally, prior to adjournment, members of the public in attendance may ask a question to the chair of the meeting on any agenda item or part of this evening's discussions. Any person wishing to speak must attend at the table up here, use the microphone, state your name and address prior to asking the questions. These requirements are necessary for the videotaping and written minutes. At this point, members of council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? I declare personal pecuniary interest in any matters relating to the business retention and expansion tourism project, as my spouse and I own and operate a business identified as a tourism establishment in the BR&E tourism project. Specifically, the June 18th council meetings, Communications number 1364 to the Planning Committee referral, Communication 1483 on the Community Tourism Plan, and the 15th Planning Reports of Committee. Regional Councillor Smith, can you please assume the chair for the confirmation of the minutes?
Thank you, Mayor Grant. I have a motion here from Councillor Schaefer, seconded by Councillor Lodwick, that the minutes of the 8th council meeting as held on June 18th, 2018 be taken as read, confirmed, and signed by the mayor and clerk. Is there any errors or omissions? Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Next on the agenda is hearing of deputations. While there are no deputations on the agenda, as mentioned, we can see if we can accommodate. May I have a show of hands who would like to make a deputation? 1, 2. Very good. We'll need a motion as an exception. Regional Councillor Smith, seconded by... Oh, you wrote a motion. We don't need a... Verbal's fine. Okay. I have a verbal motion to allow a deputation by Don Gordon from the Lions Club and Jay Yarima Weaver, and they'd be allowed to speak. Any discussion? You've asked for a recorded vote? Okay. One moment, please.
Councillor Campbell.
Yes.
Mayor Grant.
Yes.
Councillor Lodwick.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Parliament.
Yes.
Councillor Schaefer.
Yes.
Regional Councillor Smith.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Okay, thank you. I'll go in the order that's on the resolution. Mr. Gordon, would you approach the table and use the microphone? And you have 5 minutes. Oh, just so people know that after the 5 minutes, members of council can ask questions if they wish to.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Our request to appear as a deputation this evening has really come about as a result of the fairly late forwarding of our correspondence to council. And as a Lions Club, we wanted to make sure that council had the opportunity to ask any questions about our letter, and in addition to that, to reinforce the content of the letter itself. Our message is really quite simple. If you are inclined to pass the zoning amendment bylaw later this evening, it is our position that you should not pass it tonight. There are not just one, but now two legal opinions confirming that Section 37 of the Planning Act can and should be used to secure a public benefit contribution from Caitlin. It's our view that that contribution should be negotiated first before the passing of the Phase 2 zoning bylaw. And to do otherwise, in our judgment, would absolutely concede the township's negotiating position on this matter. So I think the letter in more detail states that, but I don't know if you had any questions or if that would be left till later, but in either case, we'd be willing to answer those questions.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from members of council of the deputation? Regional Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mayor Grant. Through you, thanks, Don, for your deputation. Don, you mentioned two legal opinions. I see one in front of me. I don't believe I've seen the other.
The one in front of you is probably the one that's been circulated by Ms. Yarima, and the first was an indication by the township's own solicitor that this was a direction that could be pursued.
With some ramifications. But okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Campbell.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Gordon. First of all, thank you everyone for coming out and being interested in our community. Don, maybe you could just give everybody a brief history of the Lions Club involvement in this project and the request to Caitlin to participate by donating funds to the Sunderland Arena renovation.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I could go back decades in explaining the Lions' involvement in the arena, but I'll try to keep it to more recent times. The Lions, of course, were involved in the installation of the artificial ice surface, the building of the new front for the arena, and of course the building of the new shell over the ice surface. And we feel it's time that the Sunderland Arena was upgraded, and I think you know that that perhaps could be said to all of the arenas in the township, but the Sunderland Arena in particular is in dire need of a new ice pad, a concrete pad and piping system. And at the time the shell was put over that pad in the mid-70s, there was an understanding that when it became time to replace the pad, that the ice surface itself would be expanded. So with that in mind, the Lions have been working probably for the last 7 years in earnest, and even before that, having discussions about the project, and that really culminated in a decision by our club to make a donation of $500,000 towards the project. We retained an architect to do conceptual plans of the expansion, and we have made various presentations to council on the project, and through our own investigation of possible funding opportunities, we identified Section 37 of the Planning Act as being an opportunity to secure funds from a local developer, and that's why we're here this evening, to make sure that that opportunity is not lost if council is inclined to pass a zoning amendment.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Miller.
Yes, thank you to you, Mayor Grant. Don, have you, has the club sourced out any other corporate sponsors to assist with the arena project?
Not at this time, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think our position on that is we want to know that we have a project to proceed with before we solicit any further donations from businesses in the community or individuals in the community, and in part that is predicated on the infrastructure grant program that we hope is coming down the pipe later this year. The funding agreement between the federal government and the province was announced back in the spring, but the details of the program still haven't been released, probably having to do with elections. So we're waiting for those details to be announced. If we there's an understanding that we would apply for funding through that grant program, and depending on how that goes, we would confirm with the township, because it would have to be a partnership, whether or not we have a project to proceed with, and if we can confirm that we do in fact have a project, that's when we would go out soliciting donations in the community.
Anything further? Okay, thank you, Mr. Gordon. Okay. Next deputation, please. J. Yarima Weaver.
Chair's really high. Can I just stand? And then I'm the right height.
Jay, good evening.
Hi.
And you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name's Jay Yarema Weaver, and I'm from 100 River Street, Sunderland. Thank you, first off. I didn't expect that we would be allowed to make a deputation this evening. I was disappointed when I did call, and I thought there was no time, so this is a nice extra, so thank you for that. Very quickly, my background with this project goes back a long way, but why I'm here tonight and why I wanted to speak to you is because the decision you make tonight as council is going to affect the future of Brock. It's going to affect definitely the future of Sunderland. And we have a really exciting opportunity here to enact a Section 37 provision into this zoning bylaw amendment. However, if you vote for it tonight, that opportunity goes away. Now, Section 37, we had tried to explore in the past, and we were unclear whether or not it fell into our bylaws, and we were happy when our lawyer found out that under our Brock's official plan, under Section 8.2.4, we literally have the bylaw that allows us to use a Section 37 provision under the Planning Act. And that allows us to ask the developer for money towards something that is a public or quasi-public project. Having said that, this opportunity will go away if you take a final vote and pass the zoning bylaw as written. So what we're asking is that you defer it to the new council, whoever that might be, and this is, for the record, not a political position. I've been involved in this for 12 years. This is a request as a citizen of Sunderland, because I honestly believe this is a wonderful win-win opportunity for the community, as well as for our council, because then you will walk away looking like you've actually supported the people and the community. If you don't do that, and we lose this opportunity, now the Lions are busy looking for Caitlin to hand them some money, where this way we could take that money and put it towards the arena project and still keep our parkland. So there's been a lot of confusion because they're two different agenda items. But selling our parkland was suggested to turn 2.5 acres that was won at the OMB into a saleable surplus, so Caitlin could have it. Well, we won that land at the OMB on purpose to stop Caitlin from building a fortress of houses and blocking out our parkland. It was a safety issue, it was building for the future, it was to create a walkable community. That 2.5 acres is north of our fairgrounds. Our fair is one of the oldest in Ontario, and we wanted to preserve it. There's a road to the north of that future parkland that would allow a northern exit. It would add to the safety, and it would link the future community to the existing community in a really constructive way. Hence why the concerned citizens of Sunderland fought so hard for that. Caitlin wants it back because it's valuable parkland close to the center of town. So, if we enact a Section 37 bylaw by deferring the vote tonight, we can have the best of both worlds. We can keep our parkland and secure the future of our fair, as well as we can have Caitlin contribute to the community that they're doubling in size and changing forever in a positive way that benefits everybody through funding. And we do have one of the very best planning litigation lawyers in the province. House Davies is a big firm. Look them up. They're known worldwide for the work they do in the planning world, and they're one of the best in the province of Ontario. And they've said this represents good planning. You have expert advice. You don't have to believe us. Believe the experts, so please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jay. Any questions of the deputation? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next on our agenda is communications submitted to council. There's several categories, and some of them are communications that we receive for information. Some of them are referred to standing committees, and then some are under the action. Group 1 is receive and file. Moved by Regional Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Lodwick. The communications number 1185, 1201, 1269, 1272, 1279, 1281, 1350, 1356, 1378, 1412, 1422, 1427, 1429, 1432, 1433, and 1464 be received for the information of council and filed. Any items to be pulled? Regional Councillor Smith and then Councillor Schaefer.
Thank you, Mayor Grant. I just wanted to bring the attention of the council to Communication 1269 regarding the Durham Farm Connections and their Celebrate Agriculture in Durham and the plaque that they initiated to, it's gonna hang in each of the municipal buildings and, or the libraries or museums. I'm not sure whether we've figured out exactly where, probably here, I assume. Yeah, out in the hallway there, and that plaque has the names of all the,
Here's one talking.
It has the names of all the families in the region of Durham that were recognized for farming in Canada for 150 years and currently farming in the region of Durham. So each municipality is recognized, and there's roughly 15 from Brock. I don't know, didn't count the exact number, but so anyway, that's I thought we should recognize that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and also wanted to bring attention 1272 that the region of Durham has, I guess you would say, protested to the Ontario Media Development Corporation on the fact that locations within the GTA do not get a tax credit for filming and making films and television. They get a tax credit if you do it outside the GTA, and which means that Hamilton gets a break that the region of Durham doesn't, and so they're hoping that this will be changed to make it more fair. So I thought I should bring those two.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Schaefer.
Yes, actually, Councillor Smith pulled the same thing that I was, and that was 1259 Durham Farm Connections. My question was to staff as to where the plaque would be set up.
We'll find a location within the municipal office, accessible to the public, probably in one of the hallways.
Thank you. Any other communications to be discussed? Seeing none, all those in favor receive and file. It's carried by all. Next is Group 2, and these are referrals to the standing committees of the Township of Brock. Moved by Councillor Lodwick, second by Regional Councillor Smith, that communications 1274, 1275, 1279, 1278, 1283, 1317, and 1494 be referred to the next meeting of the Finance Committee to be held on September 17th, 2018. Ms. Jamieson? Oh, I just misread it. You were right. Okay. Anything on that? Okay. The only thing I would like to add to it is some of it is dealing with development charges, review and changes done by Durham Region. Brock, my understanding is, will have the opportunity to review development charges in 2019. Be an opportunity at that time to determine. Basically, at present, we have over $3.2 million sitting in the development charge reserve that could be used to enlarge buildings and equipment or provide new infrastructure. So there'll be an opportunity for the next term to determine which would qualify. And these funds are paid by the developers that build in the Township of Brock. Any further comment? All those in favor of the referral? Carried by all. Moved by Councillor Parliament, second by Councillor Miller, that communications numbers 1170, 1219, 1276, 1344, and 1396 be referred to the next meeting of the Parks and Recreation Committee to be held on September 10th, 2018. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, I'm gonna turn this over to the chair, over to the regional councillor Smith. There's a referral in the planning committee that I have a conflict with.
I have a motion by Councillor Schaefer, seconded by Councillor Ludwig, that a communication numbers 1282, 1258, 1259, 1264, 1265, 1266, 1364, 1399, 1414, 1415, 1443, and 1462 be referred to the next meeting of the Planning Committee to be held on September 24th, 2018. And, is there any discussion on that? All in favor? Motion carried. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Parliament, the communication numbers 1280, 1313, 1340, 1391, 1475, and 1493 be referred to the next meeting of the Protection to Persons and Property Committee to be held on September 24th, 2018. All those in favor? Carried by all. Moved by Councillor Schaefer, seconded by Councillor Lodwick, that communications 1374 and 1405 be referred to the next meeting of the Administration and Personnel Committee to be held on September 24th, 2018. Question?
Not so much a question, Mayor Grant, as an observation. I know I don't always go on social media, but I have been occasionally lately, much to my usual regret. And I know that there was been remarks made by a few people that this was a 512-page agenda that came out last Thursday, and how could we possibly absorb it all? By referring to future meetings, the items we just did, we have reduced our agenda from 512 pages to 262. We just referred 250 pages worth of agendas. But for those who are anxious to serve on council, be prepared for agendas that are 300 or 400 or 500 pages and longer than that if you go to the region. So just a fair warning so that everyone knows. Thank you.
Any further comment with respect to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried by all. Okay, just need to line these up. Oh, 1271, is that a referral to staff? Yeah. 1271, please. That should be a referral to staff for comment. And do we have 1394? Okay. Perfect. Okay. We'll get back to 1271 in a minute. That's dealing with the Ontario SPCA 2018 No Hot Pets campaign. So, we'll get back to that one in a minute. Moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Campbell, that Council receive and file correspondence 1445 and 1492. 1445 is a request for filming in the Beaverton area by Jake Horowitz. 1492 is the City of Toronto immediate steps to address gun violence. Anybody wish to speak on the motion? Councillor Schaefer.
Yes, in respect to 1445, will that give, the request is to do filming on Friday, August the 31st. So I'm just wondering with respect to that.
The filming location is actually on a regional road. We have made Mr. Horowitz aware of that and referred him to the region. He will require approvals from the region. We also indicated that choice of date may not be the best, given that it's the Friday of a long weekend. So he is aware.
Thank you. That was going to be my next question, was number one, Region Road, and number two, the date being a long weekend and it being quite a bit of cottage traffic at that weekend. Thank you.
Anything further on the resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, we can do 1271 now. Moved by Councillor Miller, second by Councillor Parliament. The council referred to staff for a report as per correspondence 1271. And again, that's the Ontario SPCA. Mover or seconder wish to comment? No? All those in favor? That's carried. Next communication submitted for action is a request from the Beaverton Town Hall players for a rent reduction. Moved by Councillor Schaefer, second by Councillor Lodwick. Beaverton Town Hall players receive reduced rental rates for all musical performances hosted by their organization in the Beaverton Town Hall. Councillor Schaefer on the motion.
Yes, and through you, Mayor, the Beaverton Town Hall has shown us in both their financials and their letter the amount of money that they have actually put back into the Beaverton Town Hall. That is basically where they put 95, if not more, % of their monies, and if you read, they've donated a considerable amount of money. When the original fee was set up for musical performances, the Beaverton Town Hall players were only receiving a $5 per ticket price, and everything else was being received by the production company that was doing it. With these musical entertainments that they're looking for, the Beaverton Town Hall players are doing all of the work themselves. They're hiring the bands, and they're getting between 65 and 100 people into these events, and we welcome all events like this for people, and I hope that everybody will agree on the motion.
Councillor Campbell.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering how the rent for the Beaverton Town Hall players compares to the rent for the Sunderland Lions Theatre Group, which also is an organization that puts money back into the building.
Mr. Yettenby or member of staff have that information available?
Okay, as far as Beaverton, within our fees bylaw, there was a specific category created many years ago for the town hall players for rehearsals and theatrical events. The musical groups that were brought into the community, they were required to pay the private daily rate, which in this case is about $380, including GST. So they're asking for a reduction to approximately $254, including HST. I don't have the actual theater cost for the Sunderland Town Hall. It's not actually within the fees bylaw, so we'd have to review that and get back to you. I suspect it isn't I suspect it's not in the same magnitude of what the Beaverton Town Hall players are paying.
Well, thank you. I'll look forward to that report.
Anything further on the resolution? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried by all. Next is the Communication 1397, the Sunderland Lions Club, Caitlin Corporation proposal for Sunderland Arena project. Have a resolution here. Moved by Councillor Campbell, seconded by Regional Councillor Ted Smith. Whereas the Township of Brock received a proposal from the Caitlin Corporation on June 19th, 2018, that would provide for the sale of certain park